Vince, you made a choice. You selected a card. Just to remind you, the King of Hearts. Choice, but it's a rather significant one, because I also made a choice to be here today and to wear this. So much the coat, but the handkerchief that has been in my pocket. And if you'll notice, depicted on that handkerchief is a playing card that happens to match the one that you see. We all make choices. That's the kind of story I like to tell, true, disturbing, creepy stories. I could tell you ghost stories. I love a good ghost story. Everyone does. And yet, when you tell a ghost story, there's something in the back of the minds of the people that are listening to it. Even though they may get creeped out, they get spooked out, there's a little voice that says, it's probably not true. I like the real stories. And that story I told you is completely real. You can Google the Cape Man murders, and you'll see everything I told you is fact. Because a story like that is creepy, unsettling, and disturbing. You can't dismiss it. And this is the powerful thing about a real creepy story. It happened, which means, and it allows it to roll around in your brain, that if it happened, it could happen again. And next time, maybe it will happen to you. Now, not all the stories that I enjoy telling are creepy. I'm going to tell you a story about a wonderful, wonderful man. He's the most famous man that you probably never heard of. He was a dear friend. His name was Melvin Burkhardt. And Melvin spent over 70 years performing. The performed in most was the sideshow, the freak show, the 10 in 1, performing at various circuses and at carnivals. Also dime museums. Dime museums are an interesting thing. They really don't exist anymore. The closest things we have are the Ripley's, believe it or not, auditoriums. Except that with the dime museums, you had live performers. And that's where Melvin basically got a start. He was a teenager in the 1920s in his hometown of Louisville, Kentucky, and he developed an act called the Anatomical Wonder. It was, as he put it, a kind of sort of contortion act that he would do. He would sort of disjoint various parts of his body. He would do things like breathe through one lung at a time. He would grow, he would shrink right before your eyes. And he did this one little part. This is the only part of the act that I can do. It is called the Two-Faced Man Act. He would say, I'm going to show you why they call me the Two-Faced Man. I'll get a little closer here. It's a very, very simple act. And if anyone ever calls you a two-faced person, well, I guess this is what they mean. Because what I'm going to do is I'm going to smile on one side of my face and frown on the other. Here, let me do this for you. Keep watching. I'm just warming up now. And that's why they call me the Two-Faced Man. He did this act, and he used to do it in amateur nights in vaudeville and around Louisville, Kentucky. And then he got a job performing for a circus in 1929, and he loved it. He knew that this was his future. He was going to perform in sideshows. But there was a bit of a problem. You see, he had that one act, and if you did more than one act in the sideshow, you got paid more. So he wanted to develop something more. He ended up learning how to do some magic tricks, and that was fine and all this. But magicians were a dime a dozen. So he wanted to do something a little more distinctive. And he thought about the various acts. He thought maybe he'd learn sword swallowing, but all the sword swallowers he knew ended up kind of raspy voiced after performing 10 or more shows a day in the sideshow. And he didn't want that to happen because he was a very verbal man. He did a lot of jokes in his act. He wanted to be able to talk. So his voice was important to him. He also thought maybe doing the human pincushion act. This consists of running skewers through the flesh. But he kind of nixed that idea because when he was working for that circus in 1929, one of his jobs he had to do was clean out the baboon cage. And that baboon hated him and bit him on the hand. His hand got infected, it swelled up. And he remembered that infection and the idea of putting skewers through his flesh. It didn't appeal to him. However, there was one part of the human pincushion act, that fake cure act, that did appeal to him. You see, Melvin, when he was a teenager, in addition to performing, he was also an amateur prize fighter. He wasn't very good at it. He had 7 fights, and each of them, as he said, he ended up face down on the canvas. As he used to joke, he said, I developed quite a taste for canvas because he was knocked out in each and every one of those fights. It broke his nose a number of times. And because of that, he had to have nasal surgery when he was a teenager, moving little broken bits of a muscle and bone and cartilage. And this gave him, though his nose looked normal, right behind it was this kind of cavernous hole that allowed him to do this one part of the act, which consisted of hammering a nail into his nose. Because of that hole, he could do an extraordinary nail. This is the nail that Melvin Burkhardt used when he did this act. It is about 7 inches long, and it is about as thick as my little finger. It is huge. You probably can't even tell how remarkably savage that thing is. This is what he used. He used this and also this hammer. And when he performed the act, he also wore this hat. When he did the act in the 1930s, one of the people he worked for was Robert Ripley, the man who founded Ripley's Believe It or Not. And when Robert Ripley saw him do this act, he said, Melvin, you're a human blockhead. And the name stuck ever since. In honor of Melvin, who was a friend of mine and a mentor, I'm going to do my version of the human blockhead act. I'm not going to use his nail. I can't, I'll tell you right now. I will use a nice large nail and the hammer that Melvin used. It's unfortunate that we're not there face to face, because you could see that this nail is real, the hammer's real, it's the head that's fake. The nail is real. It's a 6-inch 60-penny nail. You can also see by the teeth marks there, I bite my nails. Bite my nails, it's just like comedy. And it is 6 inches of solid steel. I know some guys have tried to tell women that's 12 inches, but no, no, no. See, some jokes we do just for the adults. And if there are parents watching and with their kids, and the kids understand what I'm talking about, well, parents, whose fault is that? Now, let me just warm up here. And I'll show you why they call me the human blockhead. It's called the human blockhead because I can do something like this. Take the nail and take the hammer. And oh, I hit a bone. Well, what do you expect from a bonehead? Thank you, Melvin Burkhardt. Look at that. Oh, it's a lovely night. Let's go for a drive and see how far we can take this here. Look at this. Look at that. There you go. Now let me get up nice and close so you can take a look at it, folks. Ain't it something? Yes, Teresa. Now, I know when people see this, I know I can see in the thing, Stephanie, you're cringing. Look at you. Yeah, people often do that. I'll let you know something personal. I'm single. It's actually the one lie in the whole act. The fact is I am married and we have a kid. Yeah, I'm somebody's father. But the great thing about being able to hammer a nail into my nose is I ride the subways here in New York City. And when I get on the subway, the first thing I do is I hammer a nail into my nose, and no matter how crowded it is, I get a seat. Sometimes I get the whole car to myself. And it's funny, no one wants to talk you about Jesus when you have a nail hammered in your nose. And I have no fear of being mugged, because if anyone bothered me, I'd look them straight in the eye and I'd say, punk, if I sneezed right now, I'd kill you. And then I'd nail them. Nail them! It's just like comedy. And now for the fun part, out comes the nail. I love doing this because when I pull it out, I get to make a wish. Oh, look, the test came back negative. It's a topical joke from Mr. Robbins. Thank you, COVID-19. Oh, it's dirty. Let me clean this off here. What, you got something against cleanliness? What? Now, listen, I know that bothers a lot of people. I've seen these same cringing faces over and over again. So I'm going to do a little something here to redeem myself. And use a balloon because, and back me up on this, everyone loves balloons, right? Yeah, of course you do. Have you ever seen anyone take a little balloon like this, little skinny balloon, put a few twists and turns in and turn it into a cute little doggy? Yeah. I don't do that. Because I don't know how. I only know one balloon animal, one balloon figure. I hope you know what this is. Let me go for you. That's it. That's the only one I know how to do. Yeah, there you go. Yeah, kids, it's a tadpole. Sure, sure it is. Sure it is. Now, that's the only balloon animal I know how to do, but there is one other balloon thing I can do here. As I go like this, I'm down. This. There we go. Good girl. And I go like this. And I do it one more time. Maybe two more times. It means nothing whatsoever. But I'm like, and go like this. Kids, stay in school. Hey, it gets better. You see, everyone loves balloons. But like, yeah. Now, Melvin Burkhardt. The reason I do that is because Melvin did it first. He didn't do the balloon, but he did do an ice pick of all things. And he performed, as I mentioned, for over 70 years. I know this for a fact because his last performance was on October 8th, 2001. Because that was my wedding. You see, when my wife, Krista, and I got married, we had a show instead of a regular. We were both theater people, and we performers, and we had a show for the service. It involved singing, magic acts, puppetry. We had a Wild West guy, Chris McDaniel, roping, whipping. We had a burlesque stripper named Dirty Martini perform. And then Melvin Burkhardt came on and did his sideshow act. He closed the first half. The second half was the actual ceremony. It's online, by the way. If you want to look it up on YouTube, you can just search Todd and Krista's wedding. The whole thing is there. It was a fun, fun day. Very special day. And Melvin performed the act, including the human blockhead. He got 3 standing ovations that day. And the next day, I took him to the airport to fly back to Florida. And that was the last time I saw him. Because what he had hidden from me, he was very, very sick. As soon as he got back to Florida, his health fell apart. He held himself together because he knew the day was so special for me, special for my wife, Krista. He held himself together, performed beautifully. Got home to Florida, he fell apart. And 1 month later, on November 8th, 2001, he died. A couple of weeks after he passed on, his widow, Joyous, and his daughter, Bonnie, sent me a package, and it was Melvin's props, including the nail, the hammer, and his costume that he wore, including the hat. And a couple weeks after that, I got Melvin. Well, I was sent the cremains of Melvin Burkhardt. You see, Melvin, he always said that when he died, he was done. He didn't want a funeral, didn't want a memorial service. He was just done. He didn't want to be buried. He didn't just want to be cremated and then someone to throw his ashes away. Well, they sent me the ashes and said, do whatever you think is appropriate. So on February 17th, on what would have been his 95th birthday, I went with some folks out to Coney Island. The sideshow at Coney Island was the last sideshow that Melvin had worked a number of years before. And we went out on the pier there and sprinkled ashes into the ocean. So Melvin Burkhardt is forever performing an engagement for eternity there in Coney Island. Basically, does it for me here. I hope you've enjoyed hearing my little stories. If you like the creepy stuff that I do, by all means, I have a podcast called Abnormalcy. It's available on iTunes and places like iTunes where you can get podcasts. And I think you'll enjoy it. And by all means, support Pose, Magic Theater, and Doctors Without Borders, two wonderful organizations. I think you'll enjoy my podcast. We just finished the first season of 13 episodes. We're starting up season 2 on it. So hopefully we will take this further. And to finish off here, I will just use the words that Melvin Burkhardt used to use when he was saying goodbye to people. He'd say, "I'm sorry I came and I'm glad I'm going." No, wait a minute. I got that mixed around. Thank you so much. Enjoy the rest.